In June of 1996, I was firmly entrenched as a PlayStation fan. I had had my console for about 9 months. I was very impressed with the games that were available for it, especially the sports games, but there were arcade games and other games that I was really interested in. In June of 1996, I had seen a layout or spread in Game Fan magazine for a kart racing game that kind of reminded me of Super Mario Kart, but was for the PlayStation instead. The game was called Motor Toon Grand Prix, which I did not know at the time, but was actually a sequel to a game that was released only in Japan. Again, the game is just like Super Mario Kart, picking up power-ups and taking down opponents so you can finish races first. You can see how they've given faces to these cars so they have their own emotion. It's very cartoon-ish in nature, and that doesn't hurt it at all. The game is fun to play, although the vehicle handling does take some time to get used to. What really struck me about this game, and it may be difficult to see again because of the glare from my laptop screen, but the visuals in this particular game were very impressive for the time, at least in terms of how sharp they looked. They almost looked high resolution in nature, which was really impressive for a game that was available in the first year of the PlayStation's lifespan. Unfortunately, that game I was not very good at. It took me some time to get used to the vehicle handling, and honestly, I was moving on to other games pretty quickly just after playing this. I did hold on to it in my collection for some time after that, but I did wind up trading it in probably a few months later towards other things. The game was developed by a company called Polyphony Digital, and I really didn't know anything about Polyphony Digital. In fact, in 1996, I really wasn't paying a lot of attention to game developers at all. I was strictly a video game fan and not really into the nuts and bolts of gaming at the time. It's like, oh, cool, there's a new game coming out, let's get it, not necessarily paying attention to who the developer is, more than I was paying attention to who the publisher was or what system it was coming out for. But my lack of knowledge of Polyphony Digital did not last all that long, because just a couple of years later, there was a game that shook the PlayStation to its very foundations. It really invented for that particular system the racing simulation genre, or reinvented it in a way that we had not thought possible. Spoiler alert, it is Gran Turismo, this guy right here, and it looks like it's a double disc set, but it isn't really a double disc set because the front of the case is all manual. We're talking about a 60-plus page reference manual, and that's just in the front flap. You actually have to open the rear, which I'm trying to do without spilling everything. There it is, to get the Gran Turismo disc, as well as another manual that actually talks about operating the game. So you had a reference manual and an operations manual in one disc. This sucker is heavy, and this is all racing simulation. There is some arcade mode play, but it is not the star of the show. It is earning licenses, it is winning races, it is getting new vehicles and real vehicles from real vehicle manufacturers, all in a very photorealistic setting. The game still looks impressive, at least to me, in terms of today. Granted, it only runs between 20 and 30 frames per second. It's not the 60 frames per second that we've become used to in Gran Turismo games, but nevertheless, this game really shook things up, and it did not take long before we got a sequel called Gran Turismo 2, big surprise. We actually got that at the end of 1999, and we're talking the tail end of 1999 as it snuck in just under the wire. This is the greatest hits version that I have here, and the reason for that is the original release, I believe, had some issues with the rally racing portion of the game, where you weren't able to get the full 100% completion rate or whatever it was. Now, granted, I'm not good enough at the game in order to get that kind of rate, but I thought that this more complete version would be the version to own, and that's why I have it in my library. So Pete, you may be or may not be asking, this is an Unsealed episode, so where is the sealed game? Do you have a sealed Gran Turismo? I do not. And I don't have a sealed Motor Toon Grand Prix. What I do have is a game that Polyphony Digital put together for the PlayStation that released at the end of August in 1999, about 10 days or so before the Dreamcast came out. It's a game that flew very much under the radar, and while it was covered in video game magazines and some websites at the time, it's still a game when you're thinking about Polyphony Digital history that it doesn't make a lot of sense to people, because it is not a driving game. It's not an arcade racing game. It is not a racing sim. It is a game that is graphically intensive, but is a shooter. Not a first-person shooter. It is like a mech-type shooter. And to me, it's still as impressive as it was the day I first played it at FuncoLand at the end of August 1999. I am talking about Polyphony Digital's Omega Boost. This is the cover right here with the robot/mech with the huge gun. And it even says right on the back, from the creators of Gran Turismo comes the ultimate 3D blast fest. Now, if you haven't played this, visually it is very impressive. Again, you have to remember the time frame. This is 1999. And games did not always move at 60 frames per second. This is still a 30 frames per second game, and there is some age and some rust on it if you play it today versus playing it 20 years ago. However, to me, the game was impressive because it really was a change for Polyphony Digital and really kind of got them out of the box. Plus, this game, at least in my opinion, is most notable because of the awesome full-motion video introduction sequence that has some really cool nu metal/rock music that's playing in the background and really sets the stage for what is a fun, albeit a little bit on the short side, shooter or mech shooter kind of game. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to open this up today. Without further ado, there is the ID label right at the top, Omega Boost. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to open this up and see what is on the inside. This game ran about $35 brand new, which is a little bit higher than market value, but it is a game that I had my eye on for some time because I wanted a brand new copy, not just to open for the show, but for my collection as well, as the used copy that I have, while in pretty good shape, just isn't new. I really wanted to have a new copy of this to remind me of my FuncoLand days. So let's go ahead and open this up. There we go. Trying to do a better job of showing the wrapping to come off so that when I take stills of this for Twitter and Instagram and such, that you can kind of see me do it. There we go. And you don't have to see my ugly mug. Let's go ahead and take this label off. There we go. And we'll see if we can keep that on there so we can seal it back up afterwards. When we open up the case, oh man, so awesome. When we open up the case, we have the Omega Boost disc, which is that really cool flame-ish or star-ish, sun-ish color. And we also have a pair of things on the side. We have this free membership, free stuff, which we'll take out here and look at in just a second. And we also have the instruction manual. And on the back, we have album covers for Static X and Loudmouth, which supplied music for this game. And again, being a fan of rock music like I am, I loved the fact that these bands were featured in the game. Let's take a look at the free membership, free stuff thing first. This, of course, is for the PlayStation Underground magazine. It folds down, kind of like that. And let's see what it asks us, because I haven't seen one of these, I don't think, that I've done for the show before. Primary user's name, address, city, state, province, that's all the usual stuff. In the next 6 months, how many games will you purchase? What types of games do you plan to purchase? How many hours do you play on your PlayStation per week? And that's it. Nothing about magazines or anything like that. And you could subscribe to the PlayStation Underground CD magazine at that time for $30. I believe that was annually, but I don't recall. You had to have a credit card ready. You could call 1-800-983-SONY, and you had to call during Pacific Standard Time. So if it's summertime, you're out of luck. But you get, and it shows what the PlayStation Underground CD mag looks like. And I've talked about these demo discs before. These are things that I really enjoy. Now let's take a look at the manual. Again, there are the album covers for Loudmouth and Static X. There is the front cover. When we open this up, it is in color, but is very black and white nonetheless. You do have a red lining at the top, but it is very much in black and white. Let's see here. There is a storyline, which I'm not going to read. The storyline actually spans 4 pages in length before you really get going. And then it shows you a screenshot, and it shows you all of the different button combinations. It is a game that you need to play a little bit in order to get used to the controls, but once you do, it is a pretty enjoyable game. It is very action-oriented. While there is some storytelling going on, there is some narrative, it does not last long before you're back shooting things in varying levels of the game. The game kind of relies on some rotation going on where there's a lot of spinning that goes on and makes you feel like you're in the vast reaches of space and there are things going on 360 degrees around you. So there's a lot of spinning going on. So if you get motion sick pretty easy, this game may not be for you. But it is challenging despite the fact that it is short. It is fun to play, and it really does look good. While it does run at 30 frames per second, again, just like Gran Turismo before it, it is very sharp looking, high resolution looking, looks fantastic on a CRT television. I have not played it on an HD set, so I don't know how good it looks there. But the look always stood out to me, and the fact that this game is so different from anything that Polyphony Digital had done and has done to date. They never went back to this series. They never went back to any other kinds of games. Once this game was done, it was all Gran Turismo all the time for Polyphony Digital. It served them well. They have done very well with Gran Turismo since, churning out sequel after sequel, breaking new ground in visuals and sound design since. The games are well respected and beloved by PlayStation fans everywhere, even fans that are not necessarily fans of driving sims. When there's a new Gran Turismo game, there is definitely an interest level that pops up. But this particular game stands out because it is so far out of the box for what they've done, and nevertheless, it uses some of that Gran Turismo style graphic look and that almost photorealistic look to make what is a really cool experience, and one that if you haven't played, I really think you should give it a shot if you can find it. It is not one of those really cheap games, but it is not obsessively expensive either, and if you can get it complete with the instruction manual, I think that would be pretty helpful, because learning to play the game otherwise will take you a little bit of time. So, if you have played Omega Boost, I'd love to hear from you in the comments as always, and I do appreciate you checking out my work. Thanks very much for watching, and until the next time, my friends, take care of yourselves and each other, and we will see you in the next episode. Take care.